In this lesson, we will read the sequence of tenses. So before reading the sequence of tenses, you have to understand the meaning of the word sequence. Sequence means actually order. So, sequence of tenses means order of tenses. That means there may be two or more tenses, and this rule will state in which forms all the verbs of all the tenses will keep themselves. So, order of the tenses, to understand the order of the tenses, you have to understand the concept of a complex sentence. See, I have taken here one sentence for the explanation of the sequence of tenses. The sentence is, he says, this is one part, and he will go there, another part. He says that he will go there. It is a complex sentence with two parts. The first one is, he says, it is called a principal clause, and the second one, he will go there, is another part. It is a subordinate clause or dependent clause. And in the principal clause, there is a verb, and as there is a verb, there is a tense. You know, tense means the forms of the verb indicating the time of the action. So, here the verb is say, it has its form that suggests that it is the action of the present time, and here is another verb, will go, the subordinate clause. So, it has also one tense, it has its own form. Tense means the form of the verb. So, we got two verbs in this one complex sentence. Why two verbs? Because this complex sentence has two clauses. One is principal clause, another one is a subordinate clause. Now, here we see that the verb in the principal clause is the present tense, and the verb in the subordinate clause is in the future tense. Here it is. And see the next sentence, he said, one part, and that he would go there, another part. Here said is the, he said is the principal clause, and this one is subordinate clause, and this is one verb, and this is another verb. Now we can see that the verb in the principal clause is in the past tense, and the verb in the subordinate clause is also in the past tense. In the first sentence, the verb in the principal clause is in the present tense, and the verb in the subordinate clause is in the future tense. So, one is present and other one is future. And in the second sentence, the verb in the principal clause is the past tense, and the verb of the subordinate clause is also a past tense. So, it is past, but here one is present, other one is future. Why it is like this? Why? Because of the law, the sequence of tenses. The sequence of tenses is a law that has specific rules to govern these verbs of this principal clause and the subordinate clause, to control the verbs, control the tense of the verbs. So, sequence of tenses means then order of tenses in a complex sentence. Order of tenses in a complex sentence. This is the law I just said. And what is the law? The law is stated under three heads, under 3 points. The first point is, if the verb in the principal clause, the verb, take one sentence from the example given. If the verb in the principal clause, the verb in the principal clause it says here, if the verb in the principal clause is in the present or the future tense, here it is present, the verb in the subordinate clause may be in any tense. The verb in the subordinate clause may be in any tense. Now see, here it is says, here it is going. Again says the same thing, here it is was going. Here it says, here it is will be going. So if the verb in the principal clause is in the present tense, the verb in the subordinate clause may be, will be in any tense. No need of any change, any botheration, any thinking, any special consideration. Take another example from the second set of sentences, that he will say, in the rule it is stated that if the verb in the principal clause is in the present or the future tense. Here it is, verb in the principal clause is in the future tense. So the rule 1 is saying that if the verb in the principal clause is in the present tense or in the future tense, then the verb in the subordinate clause may stay in any tense. No need of giving any special importance, special consideration, special construction, anything. See, he is going, he was going, he will be going. Though the verb in the principal clause here is future and here present, the verb in the subordinate clause in both the sentences has no change, remains the same. So, what is the first rule? The first rule is saying if the verb in the principal clause is in the present or the future tense, the verb in the subordinate clause may be in any tense. There is another explanation, another subsection. What is this? If the verb in the principal clause is past tense, is the past tense, the verb in the subordinate clause must be in the corresponding past tense. What is corresponding past tense? Corresponding past tense. To understand the corresponding past tense, to wait a bit. I will go. I have given a few examples a little later. See, corresponding past tense. He said, in the past tense, verb in the subordinate clause, principal clause, the past tense. And the verb in the subordinate clause was past continuous, is past continuous tense. Verb of the subordinate clause is past continuous tense. The corresponding past tense. How corresponding past tense? Let's see. It was before combination, it was like this. He said, comma, I am going there. It was like this. Before combination. After combination, it is like this. He said, I have taken one conjunction, this is connective, and as soon as it is connected, these two parts are connected, the control is taken over by the sequence of tenses, by the law of the sequence of tenses. The law of the sequence of tenses is saying that, remember, the verb in the principal clause, here is reporting verb, is past tense. So, make the verb in the subordinate clause, that means here it is direct speech, reported speech. Change it into its corresponding past. Change it into its past form. But what type of past form? Corresponding past. What is corresponding past? That is, it is present continuous. Corresponding means it will be past continuous. So, present continuous is the corresponding of past continuous. So, if it is present continuous, it will be past continuous. If it is present indefinite, it will be past indefinite. This is called corresponding. So, he said that he was going there. It is past, it is also past. Understand? It is past, it is also past. Here you see, he said. Again, in the same, he said, he had been going there. It is also past. Here it is, here you see, said. This is a past tense, and would be going. It is also past. So, if it is past, the verb in the principal clause is past. The verb in the subordinate clause must be past. Must be the corresponding past. The past described by the law of the sequence of tense. It's okay? So, if the verb in the principal clause is in the past tense, the verb in the subordinate clause will be changed in the following way. See the table and remember this table. Keep this table in your head. This is very, very useful when you change the narration. For writing the complex sentence, writing a report, when you combine 2, 3, 4 events in a sentence, in a long sentence, so you have to use complex sentences. So, when you use complex sentences, that means you have to deal with the principal clauses, you have to deal with the subordinate clauses. So, you must remember the relation between the forms of the verb of principal clause and the form of the verb of the subordinate clause. So, it is said here, if the verb in the principal clause is past, and the directs the reported speech, the verb in the reported speech that will become a subordinate clause when it is combined into a complex sentence is present indefinite, then that present indefinite will be changed into past indefinite when they are combined. So, present indefinite will be past indefinite when they are combined into a complex sentence. Present continuous will be past continuous. This is corresponding past. Present perfect will be past perfect. Past perfect is the corresponding past of the present perfect. Present perfect continuous is past perfect continuous. Past indefinite is the past perfect. And past continuous will be past perfect continuous. Shall or will be, shall will be should, will be would, may will be might, can will be could. You must remember this. Without this, it is very difficult to do the work with narration change. Because in a narration, there are at least two portions. One is the reporting speech and other one is the reported speech. Now, when they are combined with the help of a conjunction, they will turn into a single complex sentence. And when they are in a single complex sentence, there are two verbs. Those two verbs are combined. One verb is the verb of the principal clause. The reporting speech is now a principal clause and the reported speech is now a subordinate clause. So, the reporting verb is now a verb of the principal clause and the reported and verb of the reported speech is now the verb in the subordinate clause. It is very, very important. So, this is the case. Rule 1 says, what rule 1 says? The first rule is saying, if the verb in the principal clause is in the present or it is in the future tense, the verb in the subordinate clause may be in any tense. When the principal verb, now in simple language, when the principal verb is present or future, the verb in the subordinate clause may be in any sentence. There is no rule controlling the tense of the verb of the subordinate clause. Rule 2 is saying, if the verb in the principal clause is in the past tense, the verb in the subordinate clause must be in the corresponding past tense. So, when the verb in the principal clause is past, the verb in the subordinate clause must be past. This is the thing. But if the verb, the principal clause is present or future, the verb in the subordinate clause can stay in any form. It is not that it must be past. So, these are the two rules. Now, go to the third rule of the sequence of tense. So, you learned the corresponding past forms of this corresponding present or future forms. But the third subsection under section 3 of the law of the sequence of tense is saying that if the subordinate clause is the statement of a universal truth or a habitual action, that if the subordinate clause is the expression of a universal truth or a habitual action, then its verb, that means the verb in the subordinate clause, may stay in any form, in any tense. No change is necessary. Even if the verb in the principal clause is in the past tense. Why? Because the subordinate clause is the statement of a universal truth or a habitual action. There will be no change. Understand? See the example. He says, he said, he will say. Here it is present, here it is past, here it is future. The verb in the principal clause is here present, it is past and it is future. But the verb in the subordinate clause is here is. It is said, but it is. No change. It is said, but here it is get up, not got up. No change, because it is a universal truth, it is a habitual action. So, I can give a summary. If the verb in the principal clause is in the present tense or in the future tense, so there will be no change, there will be no thinking of changing the verb of the subordinate clause, no change. Or if the subordinate clause is the expression of a universal truth or a habitual action, no need of changing the verb in that subordinate clause. So, you need not change the form, the tense of the verb in subordinate clause in two cases. When the subordinate clause is the expression of a universal truth or a habitual action, or when the verb, the principal clause is in the present tense or in the future tense. The verb in the subordinate clause, verbs in the subordinate clauses may stay in any tense as per necessity. Understand? Read, think, and think of the summary and put them in your head. Now, another small thing is there, that is under section 4 of this section, sequence of tense. This one is not so important in narration change, but it is important also in the formation of complex sentence, though they are automatically formed. See, what is this? I have not given so much importance to this for this. If the subordinate clause denotes, means a comparison, or if the subordinate clause does the work of an adjective, if it is a comparison or it does the work of an adjective, the verbs in both the principal and the subordinate clauses may stay in any tense. No botheration is necessary for this. So, if the subordinate clause, again listen, if the subordinate clause denotes, means a comparison, or if the subordinate clause does the work of an adjective, the verbs in both the principal and the subordinate clauses may stay in any tense. No botheration is necessary for this. They are fray here, to stay in their own states or forms. They need not follow any rule like a subordinate person. They are free. They enjoy their freedom. Okay? So this is the end of the sequence of tenses, which is very, very important. Without learning the sequence of tenses, it is not at all possible to write the correct complex sentence. It is not at all possible to change the narration in a correct, proper way. So, to do the narration, to change the narration, to change the voice, to form the complex sentences, the tense, three tenses, the present, past and future, and their sequence in a complex sentence must be learned very, very well. Okay? Thank you very much. Hope to see you again.